Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be sharing with you my 10 best sleep training tips. We are in the process of sleep training my 6-month-old, so we are in it. This is our third baby and our second baby that we've sleep trained. My first son, we had no idea about anything. We missed that whole chapter, I guess, on like infant sleep. We had no idea. And I have been so sleep deprived for so many years, especially with this last baby. We got ourselves into a bit of a vicious cycle where she was waking up every 2 hours. Finally, we got to a breaking point where it was like, no, we need sleep. We need sleep to function as parents. I need to parent other kids. I need to be at appointments. I need to like drive without my eyes crossing. Like, we need sleep. Also, your baby needs sleep. She needs sleep. This is so unfair to her that she's waking up every 2 hours. We need to be able to teach her how to put herself back to sleep. So like, if you're in a similar position, first and foremost, just know that like my heart goes out to you. This is like not an easy place to be, and not like, it's just, there's nothing fun about this. There's nothing fun about it. And I've been there, I am there right now, and like we are in this together. I hope that these tips help you. I hope that they work. And let's just get into it. Okay, number one, the very first tip I could give you, the very first piece of advice I could give you that hopefully makes you feel better, makes you feel like you're not alone, is that this is gonna suck. Every part of this is going to suck except for the end result. You deserve, and your baby deserves, a good night's rest. And whether you're sleep training at 8 weeks, 12 weeks, 24 weeks, wherever you're sleep training your baby, just know that like it's gonna be hard. Everything is hard with kids. Everything. I have a 6-year-old, a 3-year-old, no, almost 6-year-old, I should say, a 3-year-old, and a 6-month-old, and like nothing is easy. Nothing's easy. And so like, if this is your first baby and you're dabbling in sleep training, just know that like, hey, this is the beginning of just things not being easy, and that's okay. You're doing what's best for your baby. You are. I'm here with you. I got you. Okay. My next best sleep training tip is to stick with it. Stick with it. Once you start it, just stick with it. Because I'm telling you right now, it's so much harder to start and stop and start and stop and start. And it's also like super confusing for your baby. Like what is happening, right? Like what is happening? Create that consistency, create that routine, because that's what you want, right? Like essentially that's what you want. You want a full night's sleep. That comes from a routine, that comes from consistency. So create that for your baby, hold on to it. You got this. Like, you are getting there. Okay. Number 3, best sleep training tip. Create an optimal sleep environment for your baby. So that means pre-bedtime and bedtime, right? So whether you're putting your baby down at 7 p.m., 8 p.m., whenever you're putting your baby down, give them some time before then to wind down, whatever that bedtime routine looks like for them. So maybe it's a bath, maybe it's lotion and a little massage, maybe it's a book, maybe it's all of those things. Maybe it's having a bottle before you put them down. Like, whatever it is, do that and stick with it and do it every day. At least for the little bit of the beginning, right? Like, you don't, once your baby gets a little bit older and they learn the routine, if you want to cut out a bath every now, like whatever works for you and your family. And then let's talk about the optimal sleep environment. I'm going to make that the next one. Number 4, because that was a lot of tips I just threw at you. Sound machine. Blackout curtains. Now, a room doesn't necessarily, from what I've read from a lot of the sleep experts on Instagram, a room doesn't necessarily have to be pitch dark black for your baby. I would just say that like, create a cozy, warm environment for them. You can really start doing that from day one, from like the day your baby comes out at the hospital. Bring your sound machine. That's like a really good tip for new moms. Bring your sound machine. Just creating as much consistency in their sleep routine is going to help trigger and like send messages to them that like, okay, now it's bedtime. Like, now this, and that's what we're trying to do, right? With sleep training, you're trying to get your baby to be able to recognize that like, okay, it's bedtime. I'm tired. This is like, I'm prepping my brain. This is like, we're doing the steps to bedtime. And then once they're down in their crib, it's like, oh, now I know as the baby, this is what they're thinking. They're not saying it out loud, unless you have like a genius baby. I know how to put myself to bed. I know that it's bedtime. I don't need to be freaking out. Like, none of this is new. I'm not like screaming and crying my head off. You know, like that's the goal. So create your optimal sleep environment. I would recommend the Hatch Style machine. I'll link it down below. We have blackout curtains, blackout shades. But I do leave the door propped open. Make sure that there's good airflow in your space, in your room. We live in a very old home. It's 100 years old. And so to just make sure that like we're getting that good airflow, that her room doesn't get too hot, I do prop the door open. So her room's not like completely dark, but that works for her. That works well for her. Okay, so the next tip number 5, I believe, make sure that you're putting them down drowsy but not asleep. This is a big one. This is like the one that like all the big sleep training people on Instagram, TikTok, anywhere, this is what they're gonna tell you. Do not put your baby down asleep, because the idea is with sleep training that you want to put them down when they are drowsy, so they're tired, but they can then recognize where you're putting them down. I see my crib. I see that it's safe. Okay, now I will fall asleep on my own. And that's a tricky thing. That's where things get hard because a lot of babies, if they're drowsy and they're used to falling asleep in your arms, or they're used to falling asleep on your boob if you're breastfeeding, or they're used to falling asleep at the bottle, this is where they're going to be like, whoa, wait a second, parent, what are you doing? Like, what's happening? And this is where they'll start crying. Okay, so now is like now's where things get a little tricky, because it's like, well, what method of sleep training are you doing? What are you doing here in this situation? My next tip is to not pick them up every time they start crying. Now, this one might be a little controversial. It might like piss some people off. Especially, I think there's like a whole sleep training method of like you pick up your baby and you rock them a little bit and then you put them down, which like, okay, fine. But if we're trying to teach our baby how to fall asleep on their own, we need to allow them the space to do that. Now, I love the idea of going in, soothing them after, you know, whether that's rubbing their back, giving them a kiss, maybe doing a little cuddle and then putting them down. But let's say your baby is drowsy and they're just about to fall asleep and they're still like whimpering a little bit, and you go in there and you pick them up, they're then going to wake up, right? If they were like close to sleep. Or then you start bouncing that, like, it's just so much harder on them if you do that. So my advice would be I really like the interval. I think it falls under the Ferber method. I really like the interval method of like going in at first night, going in after 3 minutes of them crying, giving them a little rub on their back, giving them a kiss, and then leaving the room. Then going in, if they're still crying, wait 5 minutes. And then wait 10 minutes, and then wait another 10 minutes. Like, I like that interval because you're giving them the chance and the breath to learn how to self-soothe. And you're giving them the opportunity to do it on their own without constantly interrupting them, constantly going in, constantly like giving them your anxiety. Do you know what I mean? So that's ideally, that's what I would choose to do. This is my third baby. This is what worked for us. I know that everything works differently for every baby. Duh. You know, like, of course. But I would say whatever you're going to choose, whatever method you're going to choose, stick with it. That consistency is key. And just try not to like interrupt your baby so many times during that moment. Okay. I think we're on number 7. Very hard to keep track. No pacifiers, no drinking milk to sleep. This is again going to be a bit of a tricky one, because I know some people, you know, like they can sleep train and the baby has the pacifier and like they're fine, so like what's the big deal? Again, you're just kind of interrupting and delaying the baby's ability to learn how to put themselves to sleep. If the baby's relying on a pacifier to fall asleep, cool, they're falling asleep, and like maybe that's fine for now, but like eventually you're gonna have to get rid of that pacifier. And like in my mind, it's so much easier to take a pacifier away from a 6-month-old than it is to take a pacifier away from a 2-year-old who, like, you know, has a name for it and loves it so much. And then like it's, but to each his own, right? Like, I've also had friends who have gotten rid of the pacifiers with their 2-year-olds and like it's not a big deal, you know? So I don't know. I personally would do it with the 6-month-old. If you're going to be going through the stress and the anxiety of sleep training, then like why not also couple it with taking the pacifier away if you're using a pacifier, right? And yes, of course, no drinking milk to go to sleep, because the whole idea is that you're putting the baby down drowsy but not asleep. So you allow the milk to be part of like the pre-bedtime ritual and routine without it being the reason why they're falling asleep. Okay. Number 8, my next tip, is know in your brain and your soul that this is going to take a few days. This is not going to be like a quick thing. And on that note, not to give up if it doesn't happen after 3-4 days. Like, just, again, keep with it. Consistency is key. Kids of all ages thrive when there's some sort of routine, and just know that, like, especially in the first couple days, the first day is gonna suck, the second day is probably gonna suck too, but like, hopefully you see some sort of glimmer of this working by day 3. And after day 3, like, hopefully things incrementally start to get better. Now, are there gonna be like days where, do you see what I'm trying to keep track so badly that I'm keeping my hands in this position? There are going to be days where like you have slight regressions, and that's just normal. It's a normal part of baby development. But if you create those routines and those healthy habits early, then like hopefully it's easier to get back into those routines and habits once you're through those regressions, if that makes sense. Okay, I think we're on 9 and 10. Next best sleep training tip is to lean on your partner. Lean on your partner. If you're having a hard time with it, if you're having a hard time hearing your baby cry, I feel you, I am there. Try to go in it with your partner as a team, and lean on each other. Whatever that means to you, whether that's like your partner is going to do the first half of the night. This is what, well, we were supposed to do this last night, Jeff and I, but I ended up just doing all the wake ups. Because I am a control freak, and anytime Emmy was crying, like when we were gonna do the interval thing, I just didn't. Like, it was just easier for me to do it. Says every control freak. So just like you could split up the night. If you feel like it's gonna be so hard for you and it's gonna almost like impede your baby's ability to even try to self-soothe, then I would say like try to figure out a scenario where maybe your partner is the one going in and doing all of the like pats and rubs and whatever, like, and maybe you sit out the first night or whatever, you know, like whatever dynamic you have going on. I think that is a good idea. You just want to set yourself up for success, whatever and however that looks. Very last sleep training tip that I hope is super helpful is start with naps. Start with naps because that's when you as the parent, ideally during the day, have the most mental fortitude. So if you start sleep training with naps, my hope would be that you would be able to, like, you just be more present and more able to do the whole interval thing, or maybe you're just putting your baby down crying and you're just gonna let them cry and then fall asleep, or maybe you're gonna do the pick up and put down, whatever that is. You're going to be able to do it probably a whole lot better at like their 10 o'clock nap and their 1 o'clock nap and their maybe 3:30 nap during the day versus the like starting sleep training at night at like 6 p.m. or 10 p.m. and 2 p.m. and 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. You know, like if you start sleep training for naps first, I don't know, we found that to be more helpful because it's a time of day where we feel like, you know, we've had our coffee, we are a little more like mentally present than we are at 1 a.m. which, you know, duh, right? So those are my 10 best sleep training tips. I hope you found them helpful. You know, everyone does everything different, but this is what worked for us. This is what is currently right now in this moment working for us as we sleep train our 6-month-old. If you have any tips that I didn't mention or anything that you want to add to the conversation, respectfully leave it down below in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye, friends.